Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Melbourne Traditionalists podcast, episode 34. I'm Mark Moncrief from Upon Hope, and as nearly always, I have David Hiscox with me from XYZ. How are you, David?
Very good, Mark. Pleasure to be here. How are you feeling? No dry cough?
No.
No. Yeah, we're fine. We'll live.
Now, before we get to that, obviously, we're going to be talking about coronavirus.
Yes.
I actually have a quiz for you.
Oh, yes.
We're going to do this from now on.
Okay, sure.
I'm going to open this. And basically what I'll do, I've done this on other shows and I thought, hey, why not revive it for the Melbourne Traditionalists?
Sure.
And it's basically called the Chronology Challenge.
Okay.
So I asked 3 questions, history-based questions.
Right.
And at the end of the show, you'll actually give me an answer.
Oh, at the end of the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I'll ask them at the start and then at the end, we'll actually do the
Oh, that means
answer.
I have to remember.
No, you'll be reminded.
Okay, good.
Right.
Good.
And all you have to do is, I don't want the year,
Yeah.
I just want to know what order. The
Right.
chronology. What
Okay,
happened
sure.
first, what happened second, what happened third.
Okay.
All
Great.
right.
Yeah.
So these are the 3 for this week.
Mm-hmm.
The start of the 7 Years' War, invention of toilet paper in the West, invention of toilet paper in China.
Okay.
So we'll come back to that. Now, we have had just astonishing things happening the last week or so. We're recording this on Thursday, the 19th of March, and this will go up on Monday. So this is a Thursday. And so we may be a little bit behind the times by the time this actually comes out. But at the moment, the government has gone from, the Australian government has gone from saying all assemblies of 500 people that aren't necessary are to be cancelled, down to all those meetings that are unnecessary or not essential of 100 people. What do you make of it?
So, just with that,
Yep.
what we're seeing is a pattern across the West
Yes.
where governments steadily ramp up the restrictions that they place on people. And then they announce people aren't following the restrictions closely enough, therefore we have to lock everybody down and it's your fault. So my prediction is that Australia will go into full lockdown.
Yep.
I find it interesting that the government has been making a point of dispelling the so-called fake news that there's going to be martial law or there's going to be a complete lockdown, saying, oh no, that doesn't happen in Australia. But mark my words, it will happen. Because they will follow the same pattern that other Western countries have.
Well, that's right. And all across the West, countries have been closing their borders and telling people not to go to work and, stay indoors and so forth.
It's a nationalist introvert's paradise.
It's totally bizarre. And this is the thing that I have a problem with, is that if this is justified, it's not justified by the news that we've been getting out of China.
Yes. That's
so
correct.
What do they know that we don't know?
Okay.
Or is this a case of panic? Because I've written about how the medical profession seems to have become addicted to crisis because it gives them prestige, it gives them power, and every handful of years we get, there's going to be this massive massive disease outbreak. We've really got to crack down. We've really got to do this, and then it doesn't happen. Yes, people get sick, people die, but we're talking about small numbers of people compared to what they're predicting. They're predicting tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people dying, and then we find out 5,000 people died. And we seem to be in exactly that place again, except this time the government all over the world seems to be saying, no, this is much worse.
Swine flu was a few 100,000, I think. It was about 60,000 in America.
Yep.
So let's go back to the start of all of that. When you're sort of talking about the news coming out of China.
Yep.
If you look at the general pattern of our writing and the general pattern of our conversations, it's based on the fact that we do not trust our government.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
We don't trust what our government tells us. We don't trust figures from the government. We demonstrate how the government manipulates the figures, hides the figures.
But you know what I do trust? The mainstream media.
We don't trust the mainstream media.
Right? Oh, yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
And we, like in, not our last one, but the second last discussion we had, we were talking about the fact that we like the fact that conspiracy theories are becoming more mainstream because it means that distrust of the government or people who are angry with the government. That's right.
Actually, I have the exact opposite view. It really makes me angry that that's where we're at, that people are accepting conspiracy theories because the government and the mainstream media and I guess official society, the universities and that kind of thing, are doing such a bad job that people can't trust them.
But I would say it's a sign that dissatisfaction with the government is rising.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So then we get to the official figures from China.
Yeah.
I just flat out do not trust the official figures from China. If as little as I trust the Australian government, I trust the Chinese government even less.
Well, I can accept that, yes.
Yeah. So when I see that they've had over 100,000 cases, and I think their official death toll is something like 4,000, when in Italy they have currently about 36,000 cases and 4,000 dead.
Yep.
I call complete rubbish. I've seen like a few snippets of Chinese propaganda where they've got their Chinese doctors. They're all what they consider to be pretty Chinese doctors, taking off all their face masks and smiling and saying the coronavirus is over. There's news that Chinese students here in Australia are going back to China now because they think it's safer.
That's some good news.
Yeah, I call rubbish. China is a brand, and the Chinese government understand that. That's a good way of putting it. Yeah, China understands that the rest of the world is going to be all thinking to ourselves, hey, there's just been a massive shock come out of China. China's our factory, and they've just shut down their economy. Maybe it's time that we actually start producing stuff locally ourselves again, so that we don't have, so that if we get cut off from that supply, we can actually, it's not going to be as big a shock next time.
Well, I think that argument has received a massive boost in the arm, hasn't it?
Absolutely, it has. Yes, It's a huge boost for everything that we've been talking about.
Absolutely, yeah.
So China understands that, and China understands. Look, if the West reindustrializes, we deindustrialize. We lose the ability to make money. We lose the ability to control our population because we can't.
And their ability to project power.
Yeah,
because this is where it's coming to, where they are using it like the road and belt strategy to basically, buying the Port of Darwin and things like this, you know. So we constantly have these things going on where it's not just about economics, it's about power.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I hear, I've heard the start of the coronavirus just keep getting pushed back and back and back as well.
That's true.
Initially it was the start of January. And I was hearing stories about how like the doctors who initially tried to warn people about it were they were punished by the Chinese government. Now we're hearing that it's been around since December as well. So I think the Chinese government lied about it's the initial outbreak.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to cover it up initially. When they realised that it was actually a really big deal, they didn't do what governments here have done, where they steadily ramp up the control. They just went bang, and they were putting gravel in front of doors of apartment buildings.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they implemented strict social isolation straight away. But I think I guarantee you they've underreported.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm saying that without having read articles giving evidence on it, but just based on everything that I know about the Chinese government, based on the reports that I've seen so far, and compared to figures from other countries, I'm like, there's no way they're reporting properly. So from there I go, okay, the actual figures currently of death, the actual death toll for coronavirus is much higher than it currently is.
Mm-hmm.
The official death toll that I've been watching, I'm sure there are lots of websites where you can check it, but I've been going to one, and it's going up by about 100 every hour. When you look at the graph, it's starting to hockey stick.
As in how many people have died?
Yes. And the news that I heard yesterday, so that would have been Wednesday the 18th, was that the number of cases in Australia had doubled in 4 days. So
All right.
yeah, it's the doubling that we've got to worry about. That's what gives us the exponential growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so from there, the figures for mortality rate from coronavirus, from what I've seen, and what I've heard people sort of estimate and what they've been saying, is anywhere between 0.3. But then when I see the figures here, I think it's something more like 4%.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's just say it's 2%. So 2% of 100 is 2.
Yep.
2% of 1,000 is 20. 10,000, 200. 100,000, 400. 200,000 is 800. It's currently there's something like 200,000, and there are actually 8,000 deaths. Oh no! Oh, there we go. Yep. 4,000. Yeah. 4,000. So it's actually double that. We've actually got a 4% ratio at the moment. But let's take into account the fact that there are probably more people infected. Mind you, there are probably more people who've died.
And that's one of the other bizarre things that I'm being surprised about, is that the government isn't interested in testing people.
Yeah.
Why is it that people aren't being told, hey, go and get tested?
They don't have enough kits. They don't have enough. They actually need testing kits to do it. So, there's only so much testing they can do. So again, I think the figures are much greater. If we keep ramping this up, 20 million, 2% of 20 million is 400,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, they were going, okay, what if most people in Australia get it? It's 400,000 people in Australia who've died. 2%.
But it's also important who dies.
Yes.
And there are people who the elderly are the most at risk.
Yes.
And I accept that you don't actually want to put them at risk.
Yes.
But at the same time, whenever there's a flu epidemic, they're the people who cop it the most.
Yes.
And that's just how it is.
Yes. 50,000 people died in America this winter from flu.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But the other thing that we have to remember in Australia is that we're in the southern hemisphere. Yes. So the northern hemisphere is coming out of its flu season.
Correct.
But we are entering ours.
Yes.
So if this is a big problem, then this is going to be a big problem for the next 6 months.
For Australia, yes. Yeah. And particularly for Melbourne, where the weather is awful. Where I've noticed over previous years that there just seems to be a lot of flu.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being at a concert just a few years ago, where usually there's one cougher in a concert. There were dozens of coughers in this concert.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and that was in the middle of winter in Melbourne, at the recital centre. Also, consider that Melbourne has mountains on either side. I think, I just think the air tends to just stay in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
and you've got people from all over the world bringing their disease anyway.
Yeah.
It's just a place for bugs to thrive. I think Melbourne's actually going to be pretty awful throughout winter.
Well, it'll be interesting because you're a bit more on the pessimistic side.
I don't. Again, like you and I have different understandings of optimism and pessimism.
And I think that that this is all overblown,
Mm-hmm.
and I just think that the government has panicked,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the medical profession has developed a culture
Mm-hmm.
of crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and we just keep getting this.
Yes.
We keep getting this idea that, hey, this is the one that's gonna kill millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
Shutting down the entire Australian economy, shutting down most of Europe, most of North America's,
Mm.
is something you do when you expect hundreds of millions or tens of millions of people to die.
Yes.
Not 400,000 people.
Yeah, which is why this is why I leap to my two conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
Either hundreds of millions of people are going to die,
Yep.
or it's a controlled demolition.
Mm-hmm.
It is really astounding that countries all over the world have suddenly seen a massive increase in state power. Like all of a sudden, all the governments all over the world have found a way to make everybody isolate themselves from everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
stop going to work, stop traveling, stop doing all of the things that they would usually do. The thing about the threat of plague is that you get people to enforce. If you really want to, you can get people to enforce your own totalitarianism.
Well, the thing is that in a plague, people have to die.
Yeah.
And if people don't start dying, how long is this going to be able to be maintained?
But people are dying, and as I was saying before, I don't
Yeah,
trust the
small
figures.
groups of people are dying.
Currently.
Even in Italy, they said 400 people died yesterday.
Yes.
But that's actually not a huge number.
Yeah, but if you think of the old story about the guy who wanted to be rewarded by the king by having a grain of rice placed on each square of a chessboard, and every time with every square it doubled.
Mm-hmm.
We're still on that first row.
Yeah, but that's not how it works. It reaches a limit
Mm-hmm.
and then it stops.
Yeah.
So it's not going to continue until everyone's infected or everyone's
I know.
dead, or
So
but that's the way people are talking.
Yeah, but the scientists are talking about 60%. They talk about 60%. When 60% of the population gets the coronavirus, then you have herd immunity.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're talking about the scary fact of very large numbers. So, like, say in Germany, like if 60% of Germans get infected, how many people are there in Germany? Like 80 million? How many people are in Germany? Like 80 million?
Yeah, about 80 million.
Yeah, so 60% of 80 million is 6 times 8, 48 million. What's 2% of 48 million? So 1% is 48,000. That's 100,000 people in Germany. Is it 100,000 people in Germany?
We actually have
Yeah,
calculators,
let's use a calculator.
as we can just do that.
I might be off by a factor of 10 here.
Yeah, I think you are.
Yeah.
And every time we've tried to do maths on this program, we've got it
We
terribly
failed.
wrong.
Yeah, that's why I'm writing things down and I'm still sucking.
So that's 960. So say a million people.
A million people. So that's what they're talking about. They're talking about 60% to build up herd immunity. So that's a million people. That's nothing to sneeze at, pun intended.
But you see, this is the thing.
Yeah.
If these are young and healthy people, then that's really bad.
Yes.
But if these are people who are near the end of their life and
Yes.
anything could actually kill them,
Yes.
then it's just normal life.
Yes. And so,
and that's where I think it is. And I just keep thinking, hey, this is a massive overreaction.
Yeah, which boosts the controlled demolition thesis. So
I keep thinking, hey, this could really backfire. This could backfire massively.
Yes.
And in fact, there's a way that it's already backfired in two ways. The first is that, hey, foreigners bring disease. That's always been the argument, and they've always said to us, oh, it's ridiculous, it's absurd, you're just racist. No, we're realistic. And secondly, economics. Hey, why aren't we making our own goods? Why do we have to rely on a country, thousands of miles away to provide basic goods?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute boost for nationalists. Just so going back and leading back into that then.
Yep.
So we live with the illusion of security and prosperity and tolerance and all of that rubbish as well. We live in an economy built on fake money.
Yeah.
And our economy is a Ponzi scheme. Our housing prices are a Ponzi scheme. And so all of us at the XYZ have basically been pointing out one thing goes, everything goes. So it seems truly bizarre that every country in the world would sabotage their economy in this way.
Well, exactly. Yesterday I heard that we are going to have a recession.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking, hey, if we're lucky.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
If we're not, it's going to be much worse than a recession.
Yeah.
Because you can't shut down the economy and still expect to have money.
Yeah. That's why I posted on Facebook yesterday that during the Ukrainian famine in the 1930s caused by the Soviets, they had to put guards at cemeteries. Just think about that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now, the other thing that is a big part of this crisis is the shopping centres.
Yep.
People going and bulk buying toilet paper. Completely bizarre, completely nuts. And then when people started to realise, hey, we need more than toilet paper, they went back to the supermarkets and cleared out the shelves.
Yes.
And this has been happening all across the world.
Yes.
And the media's got a big part to play in it, in why this has happened. But it also shows how much distrust there is. Yeah. That people don't trust the system. They don't trust that, hey, in a month's time, the delivery trucks will still be delivering goods. And they're like, no, we've got to get everything now.
All of which was entirely predictable, which is why I started stocking up weeks before everybody else did. Because I know history. Yeah. This happens every single time. I don't even blame the media. Because this has happened every single time. The media are simply the current day way that we communicate, whether it's social media or the media. This has happened every single time something like this has happened.
All right. I don't agree. I don't think it is the way that things normally go. I think this has been much worse than other times. And I mean, it's also, we were talking about social isolation before, but it's also about that isolation that people feel. There is no community.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And people don't know their neighbours in most cases. I saw a survey in the US, which was about a month ago, which said that 40% of people never talk to their neighbours for any reason.
I don't talk to my neighbours.
Yeah.
Because they're all lefty scum.
I think I encourage you to let them know that.
Yeah. They may well find that out in a few months' time.
But there's all these people in our community who aren't part of our community.
Yes.
Who are just here, and we know they're different. They know they're different.
Yes.
And we're like, well, what do we have in common? How can we trust them? And I think people are seeing that. I think that has a big effect on on why people reacted the way they have.
Absolutely. People's instincts are clicking in, which I think is beautiful. And this ties in with those side effects that you were talking about, because it's either a pandemic where hundreds of millions of people are going to die, or it's a controlled demolition, as far as I'm concerned. But then the people doing the controlled demolition either understand that there'll be some side effects, or they didn't consider the side effects. Because, you're going to have social chaos. You're going to have essentially a whole bunch of white people who realize that in living individualistic lives, we've lost what we used to have, which is that community, which during the Great Depression, people helped each other out. You had you had communities of neighbours and of families who would make sure that people didn't starve, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. And you had a high trust society, even though there was, antagonism between Catholics and Protestants and the English and the Irish. There's Irish that smell and. How many potatoes does it take to kill an Irishman?
Go on.
Yeah, none. Yeah. Okay. I'd have to do that every time. It's just this. It's almost like a tick. We've lost all of that. We've thrown it all out, and people are going to realise that. I think what we will see in coming months is people are going to be responding to the fact that the rules have changed.
Yep.
So the reason that the native population of the West does not rise up against the abuse by the foreign invaders who've been brought in here is because we trust our governments to take care of the situation.
That's right. These institutions were built by us, for us, and they no longer serve us, but we still think they do.
Yes. So what we're going to see over the coming months is there are a whole bunch of foreign invaders who they all look out for their own community, whether it's the Chinese who are going around the countryside now in swarms raiding local supermarkets, like regional supermarkets, whether it's the Arabs who, like we've seen in the footage, like all ganged up on one guy at a Woolies, whether it's Africans in Italy openly defying the curfew there and roaming around. White people are going to see that, realize that the government is understand that the risk of banding together no longer outweighs the benefit of banding together.
Yep.
And we will help each other out, and we will start behaving like those foreign invaders as well.
Well, up to a point. Let's not act too much like them.
Oh, absolutely. I think we'll... I
know what you meant. I know what you meant.
We've always been far more civilised about it.
Yeah. Now, this has been a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But before we go, let's do the chronology challenge.
Yes.
So I have the 3 questions, and what I want you to do is put them in the correct chronological order. So what happened first, what happened second, what happened third.
Sure.
So the first question is the start of the 7 Years' War.
Yes.
The second is the invention of toilet paper in the West. And the third is the invention of toilet paper in China.
I'm going to go 3, 1, 2.
All right, so the first one is the invention of toilet paper in China.
Yep.
Then the start of the 7 Years' War.
Yep.
And then the invention of toilet paper in the West.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So toilet paper was invented in China sometime in the 1400s.
Of course it was. The thing about China is they're the people who had gunpowder for millennia but never thought to make a gun or a machine gun out of it. Which is why they had to make that horrendous movie, The Wall, where it's based... the idea is that like the Great Wall of China has been set up not to stop the Mongolians, but to stop these aliens who like these alien creatures, like demons basically, which try to invade China on a regular basis. And they've got this amazing, elaborate system of all the Chinese people working together, doing amazing martial arts to stop them. And then there are these 2 Westerners, one of whom is this annoying blonde idiot. And they find their way to China randomly, and there's another Westerner there. and then the Chinese are like, oh yeah, we only use the gunpowder when we really really need to, and now you Westerners, now you know the secret of gunpowder. We can't let you take the secret of gunpowder back to the West because you Westerners, you've got big egos and you're imperialists and you want to take over the world, and it'll be terrible if the West gets it. Seriously, I hope the figures are massively underreported in China.
The start of the
Tangent over.
The start of the 7 Years' War was 1756,
Yep.
and toilet paper was invented in 1856
Yep.
in the West,
Can
independently.
Can you tell me what was the 7 Years' War? That's one I don't know.
The 7 Years' War was one of a series of wars primarily for France to gain domination of Europe, and other powers to try and keep France in its place.
Okay.
That's the shortest definition.
Absolutely. It's another field of study. Great.
Now, where can we find out more about you, David?
In my bunker.
Do not visit his bunker.
No, actually don't. At xyz.net.au.
Good. And you can find out more about my thinking Upon Hope. Just type that into your favourite search engine and you can find it. Thank you, David.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, everyone, and keep safe.